My fiancée packed her bags, slammed her expensive engagement ring on our kitchen island, and told me she was leaving because she needed a man who would actually fight for her. She expected me to physically block the front door, drop to my knees in tears, and beg her to stay. She expected a grand, dramatic movie scene where I realized her true worth. Instead, I just looked at her, nodded calmly, and said, "Drive safe." I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I didn't chase her. I literally just called a professional locksmith and changed the locks the very next morning. 3 weeks later, when she finally realized I wasn't playing her sick little game anymore, she showed up at my house unannounced to scream at me. But by then, I was already dating someone else. And the absolute best part? It was the exact woman my fiancé had brought into my life. Here is the full story of how I finally escaped. I 32M had been with my fiancé, let's call her Vanessa 30F, for 5 long years. We had been formally engaged for exactly 1 year when this final incident happened. If you looked at our relationship from the outside, you would think we were the absolute perfect couple. We had the great downtown apartment, the cute golden retriever, the perfectly curated aesthetic Instagram photos from our vacations to Mexico and Europe. But behind closed doors, our relationship was a ticking time bomb, and Vanessa was the one constantly holding the detonator. To understand why I reacted the way I did on that final night, you really have to understand the toxic pattern she had established over the years. This dramatic exit wasn't an isolated incident. It was her favorite move. It was her ultimate trump card whenever she wasn't getting enough attention. Over our 5 years together, she had broken up with me, threatened to leave me, or packed her bags multiple times. For instance, when I had just started a highly stressful new job at a corporate architecture firm, I was working late a lot to prove myself. She felt neglected because I couldn't text her back immediately during meetings. Instead of having a mature, adult conversation with me about her feelings, she left a dramatic note on the bed saying she was moving out because I clearly didn't value her presence in my life. I completely panicked. I took 3 days of unpaid leave off work, bought her a $2,000 diamond necklace I couldn't afford, and planned a surprise luxury weekend getaway just to win her back. Do you see the unhealthy dynamic here? She would create an artificial crisis, threaten the entire relationship, and my job was to desperately chase her, shower her with endless validation, and give her whatever she wanted. It was a test. It was always a test to measure my devotion. And every single time I passed it by begging on my knees, I just reinforced the idea that she could treat me like absolute garbage, and I would always come crawling back. I was trapped in a cycle of emotional manipulation, but I was too deeply in love to see the reality of my situation until everything finally boiled over on a random Tuesday night in late October. I was absolutely exhausted that night. I had just finished a brutal 14-hour shift at the architecture firm trying to meet a massive project deadline. I came home, took a hot shower, and sat heavily on the couch with a slice of cold leftover pizza. Vanessa walked into the living room, clearly looking for a fight. She immediately started complaining about how I hadn't helped her pick out the specific floral arrangements for the wedding reception. I told her I was deeply sorry. I was just dead tired, and we could easily do it tomorrow evening when my brain was actually functioning. That wasn't good enough for her. The familiar switch flipped in her brain immediately. She stormed into our bedroom, aggressively packed a massive suitcase with all her clothes, and marched back out into the kitchen. She slammed her expensive engagement ring on the marble island so hard I thought the diamond would actually crack in half. "I'm done," she said, using her best theatrical, dramatic voice. "I am absolutely done with this. I need a man who is present. I need someone who will fight for me, not someone who sits on the couch eating pizza while our entire wedding falls apart. I'm going to my sister's house, and I don't know when I'll be back." She stood there in the kitchen, her hand firmly gripping her suitcase handle, waiting for the familiar script. She was waiting for me to jump up, grab her hands, and plead with her to reconsider. She wanted the validation. But as I sat there, looking at her manufactured outrage, I realized something terrifying but incredibly liberating. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel a drop of panic. My heart rate didn't even spike. I was just profoundly, incredibly bored. I was so exhausted by the endless games. I was tired of constantly having to earn my place in my own home. I looked at the glittering ring on the counter, then looked at her red face, and calmly took another bite of my pizza. "Okay," I said quietly. "Drive safe. The roads are a bit slick tonight." Her face actually glitched. She looked like a computer that had just crashed trying to process an impossible command. "Excuse me? What did you just say to me?" she snapped, her voice trembling with complete confusion. I just repeated myself, telling her to tell her sister I said hi. She stood there for another full, agonizing minute in total silence, waiting for me to crack and apologize. When I just picked up the TV remote, turned up the volume, and unpaused my show, she lost it. She grabbed her heavy bag, stormed to the front door, and slammed it so hard the framed pictures physically rattled on the drywall. I finished my pizza in utter silence and went to sleep. I slept for 9 hours straight. It was the deepest, most peaceful, uninterrupted sleep I had experienced in half a decade. Wednesday went by with no missed calls and no desperate text messages. Thursday went by with still absolutely nothing. I knew exactly what she was doing. I knew her playbook inside and out. She was sitting at her sister's house, staring obsessively at her phone screen, waiting for the barrage of desperate messages. She was waiting for the apology flower delivery to arrive at the door. She was waiting for me to show up outside her window in the pouring rain. By Friday morning, I made a concrete decision and finally called a professional residential locksmith. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of pure practicality. She had dramatically broken up with me, formally moved out, and willingly left her engagement ring behind. I was just taking her at her exact word. I paid the locksmith to change the deadbolts on the front and back doors. Then, I spent the entire weekend deep cleaning the apartment, playing video games with my friends online, and hanging out with my dog at the park. The sheer amount of peace in my apartment was intoxicating. I didn't have to walk on eggshells. I didn't have to worry about my tone of voice triggering a 4-day silent treatment. For the first time in 5 years, I could finally breathe. Now, this is where the story takes a massive turn, and I need to introduce someone else. About a year prior to this incident, Vanessa had hired a personal trainer at our local luxury gym. Let's call her Rachel 29F. Rachel and Vanessa became fast friends. They would go out for happy hour drinks, and eventually, Vanessa started bringing Rachel around to our apartment for weekend game nights and dinner parties. Rachel was everything Vanessa wasn't. She was chill, naturally funny, entirely drama-free, and she didn't care at all about projecting a perfect social media aesthetic. Whenever the three of us hung out, I found myself actually looking forward to Rachel's company and her great sense of humor. She would ask me detailed questions about my complex architectural projects, actually listen to my long answers, and make me laugh until my ribs physically hurt. But because she was Vanessa's close friend, I kept incredibly strict boundaries. I was polite, friendly, and completely respectful at all times. However, over the last few months, I had noticed a subtle shift in their dynamic. Rachel had stopped coming around the apartment as much. During one of the rare times, it was just me and Rachel standing in the kitchen while Vanessa was getting ready. Rachel had looked at me with this deeply empathetic expression and said, "You know, you have the patience of an absolute saint." She saw the toxic dynamic. On day 7 of the glorious silence from Vanessa, I was sitting at a local coffee shop working on some digital blueprints when I coincidentally saw Rachel walk through the door. She looked highly surprised to see me, ordered her coffee, walked over to my table, and sat down across from me. "Hey," she said, looking a little awkward and hesitant. I heard what happened. Vanessa told the whole morning gym class that you guys are on a temporary break because you need some space to figure out your life priorities. I couldn't help it. I actually laughed out loud in the middle of the quiet cafe and told her the truth about the ring and the suitcase. Rachel rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Yeah, honestly, that sounds way more like the truth. Listen, for what it's worth, I think you're an amazing guy, and I think you're going to be just fine without her. We ended up sitting there talking for over 2 hours. Not about Vanessa or the breakup drama, but about everything else. Life, movies, travel, food, our childhoods, our goals. It was the easiest, most fluid conversation I had ever had with a woman. When she finally had to leave for work, I took a massive risk. I asked her out on a real dinner date. She smiled this huge, breathtakingly genuine smile and quickly said yes. We went out on Friday to a small Italian place, and it was incredible. We went out again on Saturday to a local arcade bar. By the time the 3rd week rolled around, Rachel and I were practically inseparable. We were keeping it completely quiet, obviously, but we were spending almost every single evening together. The physical and emotional chemistry was absolutely insane. Being with her felt like I had finally taken off a 100-pound backpack I'd been carrying uphill for 5 years. Exactly 21 days after Vanessa walked out of my life, Rachel came over to my place to cook dinner together. We were in the kitchen, chopping fresh vegetables, drinking cheap wine, and laughing uncontrollably. Suddenly, the laughter was violently interrupted. I heard the distinct, aggressive sound of a key aggressively jamming into my front door lock. Then frantic rattling. Then violent, angry shaking of the doorknob. "Open this damn door!" a familiar voice shrieked from the hallway. It was Vanessa. I calmly wiped my hands on a kitchen towel, looked at Rachel, who was standing there with her eyebrows raised in amusement, and walked slowly to the front door. I unlocked the new deadbolt and pulled the door open. Vanessa stormed in like a hurricane, looking absolutely manic. "Why is my key not working? Did you seriously change the locks on my own apartment? Are you completely insane?" She screamed at the top of her lungs. She was halfway through her screaming rant before she stopped dead in her tracks. Her eyes moved past my shoulder into the brightly lit kitchen and landed directly on Rachel, who was casually holding a glass of red wine and wearing one of my oversized gray hoodies. The absolute silence in the room was so incredibly thick, you could cut it with a machete. Vanessa's face went through a rapid succession of emotions, from angry to confused to absolutely horrified in the span of 3 seconds. "Rachel?" Vanessa whispered, her voice cracking. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" Rachel didn't flinch. She just took a slow sip of her wine and said, "Making pasta." Vanessa whipped her head around to look at me, her voice shaking with unhinged rage. "What is this? What is going on here? We are on a temporary break, and you're sleeping with my gym friend?" I leaned against the wall and calmly explained reality to her. I told her we were not on a break. She dramatically broke up with me, left her engagement ring, packed her bags, and moved out. Furthermore, Rachel wasn't even her friend anymore, as Vanessa had been bad-mouthing her behind her back to the other gym girls for months. And finally, I gently reminded her that she didn't live here anymore, so she needed to significantly lower her voice in my home immediately. "You were supposed to come after me," she screamed, the tears finally spilling over her cheeks, ruining her makeup. "You were supposed to prove you actually cared about me. You're a sociopath. You replaced me in 3 weeks." "I didn't replace her," I replied, keeping my voice perfectly steady. I just agreed with her for once. She explicitly said she couldn't do it anymore, and I respected her decision as an adult. The meltdown that immediately followed was legendary. Vanessa called me every horrific name in the book, threw a small decorative bowl at the living room wall, shattering it, and eventually stormed out, screaming threats that she was going to completely ruin both of our professional and personal lives. The next few weeks were extremely chaotic, but honestly, pretty highly entertaining from my perspective. The flying monkeys came in full force to defend her honor. Her mother called me 3 times, crying hysterically about how I had stolen her daughter's precious youth. Her father texted me aggressively, demanding I pay for her new apartment security deposit. Mutual friends reached out, trying to play the mediator and convince me I was making a huge mistake. I handled all of it the exact same way. I drafted a single, polite group text explaining that Vanessa ended our engagement on her own terms, and I simply accepted her decision. Then, I hit send, and I blocked every single one of their numbers. She even tried to get the wedding venue to keep my half of the deposit, claiming I maliciously breached the contract. I simply emailed the venue manager the security camera footage from my living room showing her angrily packing her bags and leaving. The manager actually felt so bad that he refunded my entire deposit and canceled her booking completely. As for me, I'm sitting on the couch right now, writing this story while Rachel is sound asleep on my lap. I didn't just dodge a bullet, I dodged a tactical nuclear missile. I learned that you can never love a toxic person enough to make them respect you. When someone confidently threatens to leave you, just hold the door open. If you enjoyed hearing this crazy story and want more intense relationship content just like this, please make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos!